I had always trusted my instincts, but in the days leading up to that night, I felt a nagging whisper at the edges of my mind, a quiet tension I could no longer ignore. Noah had claimed he was staying late to finish renovations for Iris, his mentor and landlord, a woman whose presence in his life I had tolerated more than I had understood. I'd accepted it, thinking it harmless, professional. But the nagging feeling refused to dissipate. The stage production I was working on had been my sanctuary, my world where chaos could be controlled, where creativity thrived. Yet even as I directed actors, arranged lighting, and wrestled with set designs, a part of me couldn't focus. My reborn clarity, a gift from the massive surge I'd experienced days ago, pulsed quietly in my mind, reminding me that I owed myself honesty. I couldn't keep ignoring the truth I'd been avoiding about Noah. I walked past the equipment crates and quietly pulled out my phone. The GPS I had installed on Noah's work truck, something I had set up initially for safety reasons, had become a tool of revelation. My heart sank as I saw its location, an upscale condo complex, unfamiliar, far from the warehouse and certainly not from Iris's official residence. The late-night work excuse suddenly felt flimsy, implausible. My pulse quickened, my chest tightened, clarity was painful in its honesty. I left the theater without explanation, the stage lights casting long shadows over the empty seats. I drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel, my thoughts circling. I wasn't afraid, not exactly, but I was bracing for a truth I suspected would be devastating. The condo complex loomed before me, sleek and modern, a stark contrast to the modest life I had shared with Noah. The building felt alien as I entered, the cool air from the lobby brushing against my skin. Every instinct screamed caution, but I felt the strength of my rebirth coursing through me. No more illusions. No more ignoring signs. I pressed the elevator button and rode in silence, imagining the confrontation I didn't want but knew I couldn't avoid. When I reached the floor, the hallway was quiet, almost sterile. I approached the unit I had seen on the GPS, and to my shock, the door was unlocked. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear but from the raw reality I was about to face. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The scene was almost theatrical in its cruelty. Noah and Iris were there, a quiet domestic tableau that tore through my chest. They were sitting together on a new sofa, laughing softly, sharing a meal. Family photos adorned the mantel, snapshots of them together, perfectly curated. Iris glanced up at me, smiling warmly, her words casual, almost rehearsed. "Oh, you must be here for the keys. Noah said you were dropping off his mail." The realization hit me like the electrical surge that had started this clarity. This wasn't a fleeting affair or a secret fling. This was Noah's world, and I was not a part of it. The domesticity, the familiarity, the absence of shock, it was all too deliberate. I turned on my heel, my hands shaking, my mind racing. I needed help, guidance, someone steady who saw truth as clearly as I now did. Sam Price. Noah's childhood best friend, quietly observant, morally grounded. The man who had always disapproved of Noah's gray areas in life. He would know what to do. I dialed Sam, my voice steadier than I expected, even as my chest tightened. "Sam, I need you. It's urgent." I didn't yet know how the night would unfold, but I knew one thing. I would no longer blind myself to the truth. I was reborn, and this time, I would act with clarity, courage, and control. The drive from the theater to the condo was a blur, though my mind was sharper than it had ever been. Every beat of my heart felt synchronized with a single, undeniable truth. I could no longer ignore what was right in front of me. The massive surge that had struck me days ago hadn't just shocked my body, it had illuminated my perception, exposing the illusions I had clung to with Noah. Now, clarity guided me, unwavering and unflinching. When I pulled up in front of the sleek building, my stomach twisted with tension. The city's night lights reflected off the polished windows, painting the exterior in a cold glow that mirrored the chill spreading through my chest. I left my car and walked purposefully toward the unit, each step measured, each breath controlled. This wasn't just about discovery anymore, it was about witnessing the truth, seeing the life Noah had built without me. I found the door unlocked, and for a fleeting second, panic whispered in my mind. But I had learned that clarity required courage. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood, an aura of domesticity that made my chest ache. And then I saw them. Noah and Iris sat together on a plush, newly purchased sofa. A small dinner had been laid out on the coffee table, 2 plates, neatly arranged, glasses half full with wine. The lighting in the room was soft, intimate, almost cinematic. My eyes instinctively flicked to the mantel. Photos. Pictures of them together, candid moments captured over time. The kind of photos that weren't taken casually, they were curated, a story in frames. Iris glanced up at me, her expression neutral, her tone disarmingly polite. "Oh, you must be here for the keys. Noah said you were dropping off his mail." There was no surprise in her voice. No alarm. She had clearly rehearsed, or at least anticipated, this intrusion. The calm domesticity of the scene, laughter, shared familiarity, the quiet comfort of 2 people intertwined in life, it was the final, undeniable confirmation. I was not part of that world. I felt the sting of betrayal as the room's warmth seemed to mock me. The trust one had placed in Noah had been quietly dismantled, replaced with a life he had built alongside Iris. Every shared laugh, every touch, every glance between them spoke volumes about a relationship that had existed far longer than he had allowed me to see. But even as my chest tightened, I felt a cold edge of resolve. Clarity demanded action, not despair. I could not confront Noah here. The scene was too entrenched, the power dynamic too clearly in their favor. I needed strategy, support, someone who could help me secure my life and my work before I even considered addressing him. Sam Price came to mind immediately. Quiet, steady, morally grounded. He had always seen through Noah's morally ambiguous ways. He wouldn't act out of anger or impulse, only precision and protection. I could trust him to help me navigate the fallout, to execute the steps necessary to secure my artistic assets, my reputation, and myself. Pulling my phone from my pocket, I sent Sam a brief, urgent message. "I found him. It's worse than I thought. I need you now." As I stepped back into the hallway, leaving the intimate domestic scene behind, I felt the first flicker of empowerment. I had seen the truth. I had accepted it. And now, guided by clarity and the quiet strength of someone I trusted, I would reclaim my life. Sam arrived within the hour, his calm presence a sharp contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. I hadn't expected to feel relief so immediately, but the sight of him, steady, perceptive, quietly protective, grounded me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. He didn't ask for details or demand explanations. He simply observed, nodded, and waited until I was ready to speak. I recounted everything, starting from Noah's suspicious absences to the GPS discovery, to the scene I had just witnessed. Each word I spoke was heavy with betrayal, yet lighter with the release of finally articulating the truth. Sam listened intently, his eyes never leaving mine, offering nothing but quiet validation. There was no judgment, no rushed advice, just clarity, the kind of clarity I had been seeking all along. Once the story was laid bare, we began planning. The strategy had to be subtle, precise, and swift. Noah's manipulation had always thrived in the gray areas, in the quiet gaps of trust. Sam's insight into his tendencies was invaluable. We mapped out a separation that would protect my artistic assets, my reputation, and my clients. Each step had to be calculated, each move deliberate. There was no need for drama, no need for public confrontation. This was about reclaiming my life quietly, with efficiency and integrity. Sam suggested starting with the essentials, securing my accounts, transferring my most important projects to my name, and alerting clients of potential interference without revealing the full depth of Noah's betrayal. Everything was framed professionally, leaving no room for suspicion, no leverage for Noah to exploit. I marveled at his foresight. He anticipated his every potential countermove, leaving no gaps for manipulation. As we worked through the night, a strange sense of intimacy grew between us. It wasn't rushed or forceful. It was the calm trust born from shared purpose and mutual respect. Sam's presence was comforting, protective without being overbearing. I realized that for the first time in months, perhaps even years, I could breathe without fear, without second-guessing my surroundings. He wasn't just my ally in strategy. He was my anchor in a storm I hadn't expected to survive emotionally intact. By dawn, the framework of the separation was in place. My artistic work was secure, my clients informed, and Noah's capacity to interfere effectively neutralized. The relief was palpable, a weight lifting from my chest that I hadn't fully realized I had been carrying. Yet beyond relief, I felt a new surge of possibility, the recognition that life could be rebuilt with honesty, with integrity, and with someone I could truly trust. Sam watched me quietly as I leaned back, the exhaustion of the night settling over me. "You're safe now," he said, the statement simple, unembellished, but carrying profound weight. "Everything you've built is yours. He can't touch it." I let the words sink in, feeling the tension of months, the weight of betrayal, finally release. And in that quiet, intimate moment, I realized something else. The trust, the safety, the shared respect, it was becoming something deeper, something neither of us had to force. There was warmth, yes, but also a subtle, growing connection I hadn't anticipated. For the first time since the truth hit me, I felt in control, empowered, and alive. The toxic ties that had bound me to Noah were severed, and the path ahead, though uncertain, was mine to navigate. With Sam by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next, reclaim my life fully, and perhaps even find something more than safety, something like trust, respect, and maybe, in time, love. The days that followed were a delicate balance of restoration and revelation. With Sam by my side, I moved through each task deliberately, methodically, knowing that every decision mattered. The initial shock of betrayal had passed, replaced by a focused determination. The world I had once shared with Noah no longer dictated my sense of self. I was the architect of my own life now, and I intended to build it deliberately. I started with my work. Projects that had once been tied up with Noah's interference were now fully under my control. Each email I sent, each client call I made, reinforced a simple truth. I could run my life and career independently. The liberation was intoxicating. I realized how much of my energy had been siphoned by doubt, fear, and the weight of his duplicity. Without it, my creativity and focus returned tenfold. Sam's presence was both grounding and comforting. He never overstepped, never tried to rush intimacy or affection. Instead, he offered quiet support, guidance, and protection. I began to see him in a new light, not just as Noah's childhood friend, but as a man whose integrity, patience, and wisdom were rare. He understood the importance of trust, of quiet loyalty, and the subtle ways in which one can rebuild a life without fanfare or spectacle. One evening, after a long day of reorganizing my studio and securing my client accounts, we sat on the small balcony of my apartment, the city lights stretching out before us. Silence stretched comfortably between us, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bird calling in the twilight. It felt different from the forced, performative connections I had known before. Here, there was no pretense, no obligation, just the steady presence of someone who had my back in a way that mattered. "I never realized how much energy I wasted," I said quietly, breaking the silence. Worrying, doubting, trying to see what he wanted me to see instead of what was real. I feel free. For the first time in years, I actually feel free. Sam's hand brushed against mine, gentle and deliberate. "Freedom suits you," he said softly. "And it's earned, every step of the way. You didn't just survive. You reclaimed everything that belongs to you, your work, your life, your choices." I felt a warmth I hadn't anticipated, a subtle intimacy growing between us. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet understanding that had been forming since that night in the condo. I realized that what I had found in Sam was more than security. It was the kind of connection built on trust, respect, and shared values. Over the following weeks, we continued to solidify the protective boundaries around my life. Noah's contracts quietly expired, his influence waning as Sam's network ensured my reputation remained intact. Each day, without interference, without deceit, reinforced my belief that I could live fully, without fear, without compromise. And in the quiet moments, when Sam and I shared a laugh, a conversation, or even just the simple comfort of each other's presence, I began to understand that the calm, steady partnership we were forming, was the true reward of clarity. My rebirth wasn't just about survival. It was about discovering a life worth living and someone worth trusting with it. The weeks after reclaiming my work and securing my assets passed with a strange rhythm, a mixture of quiet triumph and subtle rebuilding. Noah's absence from my life felt almost surreal, a ghost that once had power over me, now powerless and irrelevant. With each passing day, I noticed how much energy I had been wasting on anxiety and anticipation. That energy was now mine to use, and I poured it into projects, ideas, and spaces that reflected my vision, not his manipulation. Sam became a constant presence, but not in the intrusive way that threatened my independence. He was steady, quietly observant, and patient, always respecting the boundaries I had set while offering his support wherever I needed it. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, a bond began to form. Our connection was built on the kind of trust one hadn't known I was capable of again. Trust that felt safe, unforced, and deeply intimate. One evening, after a long day of reorganizing client files and securing my studio space, Sam suggested we take a walk through the park. The night air was cool and comforting, and the city lights reflected on the surface of the fountain in the center of the square. As we walked side by side, I realized I was smiling without thinking, genuinely at ease for the first time in months. "You've done more than just protect your work," Sam said quietly, his voice soft but firm. "You've reclaimed yourself. And seeing you like this, strong, clear, in control, it's inspiring." I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with relief or triumph. It was something entirely different. I glanced at him, our eyes meeting briefly, and noticed the subtle care in his expression, the kind of attention that went beyond friendship, beyond loyalty, into something tender and personal. My heartbeat quickened, but this time, it was a steady, grounding rhythm, not the chaos that Noah had created in me. As the days passed, our intimacy deepened naturally. Small gestures, a reassuring touch on my back while carrying supplies, a hand lightly resting on mine during long discussions about work, the quiet humor we shared in moments of exhaustion, became anchors in my rebuilt life. It wasn't rushed or forced, but deliberate in its own way, rooted in trust and respect rather than obligation or expectation. Meanwhile, Noah's influence quietly crumbled. Clients who had once wavered or been swayed by his interference now fully recognized the integrity and professionalism I had rebuilt. The contracts he had sought to manipulate dissolved harmlessly under the weight of Sam's quiet network of contacts and my steadfast reputation. Each victory, each small affirmation of my independence, strengthened my sense of self, my clarity, and my capacity to trust someone again. One night, sitting on the balcony of my apartment, Sam and I watched the city lights together. His hand found mine naturally, fingers interlacing with mine, warm and steady. I realized, with a profound sense of certainty, that this was different. Not a fleeting comfort, but a partnership built on shared values, loyalty, and respect. I could finally imagine a future where someone could care for me without manipulation, without secrecy, without betrayal. In that quiet moment, I understood what my rebirth had truly given me: freedom, clarity, and the chance to cultivate not only a life of my own making but also a love rooted in trust, honesty, and safety. And as Sam squeezed my hand gently, I realized that the life I had fought to reclaim was not only restored, it was richer, warmer, and more promising than I had ever dared to imagine. As the weeks continued, the ripple effects of Noah's absence became increasingly evident. His carefully constructed facade, the the one he had woven around his life with Iris, and the business dealings he had tried to manipulate, began to unravel quietly but completely. Clients who had once tolerated his half-truths started noticing inconsistencies in his promises and deadlines. Colleagues who had admired his polished image were beginning to question his reliability. The cracks that had been hidden for so long were widening, and I could feel the satisfaction of watching truth quietly reclaim its space. I no longer felt anger in the chaotic way I had initially. Instead, I observed with a calm sense of justice, almost as if the universe had decided to realign itself in my favor. Sam's presence remained a constant anchor. He was patient, never pushing me to confront Noah directly, understanding that my priority was to secure my life and ensure my work and relationships were untouchable. Yet his quiet approval, the occasional look of pride in my regained composure, was an intimate reassurance that I had not anticipated but deeply appreciated. The revelation of Noah's duplicity had given me more than freedom. It had given me confidence. Every email I sent to clients, every step I took to reorganize contracts or clarify my professional position, felt like an assertion of power I hadn't allowed myself before. I wasn't seeking revenge. I didn't need it. Instead, I was demonstrating, through every professional and personal action, that I was untouchable by his deception. One evening, Sam and I were reviewing plans for my upcoming stage projects when a call came through from a former client of Noah's. Their voice was tense, apologetic. They admitted that they had been misled by his assurances, that his promises had not matched reality, and that they would now work exclusively with me. I shared a quiet smile with Sam, feeling a warmth of satisfaction that wasn't fueled by malice, but by the integrity of truth prevailing. The moments of victory, though small, were significant. And alongside these victories, my relationship with Sam continued to deepen in ways that felt natural, unforced. Late nights spent organizing work led to conversations about life, values, and shared dreams. Small touches, a hand brushing against mine while sifting through documents, a reassuring squeeze when tension arose, grew into a quiet intimacy. I felt my heart opening again, not recklessly but safely, with someone who valued honesty and respect above all else. By the time Noah's influence had fully diminished, the man I had once loved and trusted was little more than a shadow in my past. His failures, his deceit, and his manipulations were exposed quietly but thoroughly. I didn't need to gloat, didn't need to confront him publicly. The collapse of his carefully curated life had been orchestrated by truth itself, and I watched it unfold from a place of calm authority. That night, Sam and I stood on my balcony, city lights glimmering below us. His hand found mine naturally, and I let it rest there. The warmth of his presence, the trust we had cultivated, and the stability he provided were no longer just comforting. They were intoxicating. For the first time since that night at the condo, I felt completely safe, completely seen, and completely alive. I realized that the rebirth I had experienced after that shocking, painful revelation wasn't just about reclaiming my life. It was about discovering a love that was grounded, enduring, and profoundly real. And as I squeezed Sam's hand in return, I knew, with a clarity sharper than any betrayal could ever have dulled, that I had found my home, my partner, and my heart. The weeks following Noah's quiet downfall were filled with a sense of rhythm and renewal I had never experienced before. The chaos and uncertainty that had once dominated my life were replaced with deliberate action, calm confidence, and the warmth of someone who genuinely cared for me. Every day felt like an affirmation that my rebirth wasn't just about escaping toxicity. It was about embracing a life built on clarity, honesty, and mutual respect. Sam and I spent more time together, not out of necessity, but out of choice. We worked on my projects, refined my stage productions, and occasionally just sat in silence, enjoying the simple comfort of one another's presence. It was a quiet intimacy, the kind that grew organically from shared trust and understanding. I found myself noticing small details I hadn't before, the steadiness in his gaze, the subtle humor in his observations, the way he instinctively anticipated problems before they arose. He was a partner in every sense, intellectually, emotionally, and morally. For the first time, I allowed myself to envision a future that didn't revolve around betrayal or compromise. My work thrived under my full control, and my clients' loyalty strengthened. Each project I completed reminded me of my own resilience, of the clarity I had gained from the shock that had forced me to see Noah for what he truly was. And alongside this professional resurgence, my personal life was transforming in ways I hadn't dared to hope for. Our connection deepened in quiet, meaningful ways. One evening, after reviewing set designs for an upcoming performance, Sam lingered longer than usual. We stood on the balcony, the city lights stretching into the night, and without a word, he took my hand. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, nor did it require explanation. It was steady, reassuring, and intimate. I squeezed back, feeling the weight of months of fear, betrayal, and uncertainty lift with that simple touch. It was during moments like this that I realized how much I had been missing, not just in love, but in life itself. Trust, respect, and patience were not weaknesses. They were the foundation of the kind of bond one had with Sam. He hadn't just protected me from Noah's deception. He had shown me what genuine partnership could feel like. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, my heart began to open again. I found joy in the small, quiet victories of everyday life. A successful rehearsal, a positive client review, a long walk through the city streets with Sam's hand brushing against mine. Each instance reinforced that I had finally reclaimed my life. The sense of danger and manipulation that had once haunted me was gone, replaced with stability and a growing, tender intimacy. By the end of the week, I realized something profound. I was no longer defined by what I had lost or by the betrayal I had endured. My life, my career, and my heart had been rebuilt stronger, clearer, and more vibrant than before. And as I glanced at Sam, standing quietly beside me, I knew with absolute certainty that I was ready to embrace every moment of this new life together. The rebirth I had undergone was no longer just a memory of a painful shock. It had become a living, breathing reality, one filled with trust, love, and the quiet strength that comes from truly seeing the world as it is and choosing to live boldly within it. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of the city waking around me. I stood at my studio window, watching sunlight scatter across the streets below, and for the first time in months, I felt completely unburdened. Noah's shadow no longer lingered over my life. The deceit, the betrayals, the quiet manipulations, all of it had been dismantled. And in its place, a new clarity reigned, freedom, self-respect, and the love of someone whose presence was steady, honest, and unwavering. Sam had stayed by my side through every step of the reconstruction of my life. His support had never been forced, never conditional. He had helped me not only secure my professional domain, but also protect my heart. And over time, the bond we shared deepened. The intimacy that had started with small, subtle gestures had grown into a powerful, mutual connection. I trusted him with my life, my work, and my heart, and I felt it reciprocated in every look, every word, every quiet act of care. Noah's influence, once a looming threat, had diminished entirely. His professional reputation was tarnished quietly, but irrevocably. Contracts that had been within his reach were no longer accessible, and clients who had once hesitated to trust me now sought my guidance exclusively. The satisfaction was subtle, almost meditative. There was no need for public drama. Truth had done the work for me, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakably independent. That afternoon, Sam and I walked through the park, the same place where our bond had begun to strengthen weeks ago. The air smelled faintly of blooming flowers, and the sunlight glinted off the river, casting golden reflections across the water. We stopped on a small bridge, leaning against the railing, our hands intertwined naturally, perfectly fitting together. "You've done everything yourself," Sam said quietly, his voice filled with admiration. "I've helped only a little. But watching you reclaim your life, it's incredible." I smiled, feeling a warmth that went far beyond relief or gratitude. It wasn't just about reclaiming my life, I admitted. It was about learning what I deserve, someone who respects me, someone I can trust, and a life I can fully call my own. Sam squeezed my hand, and I felt the steady pulse of his heart against mine. "Then let's keep building it together," he said simply, and in that moment, everything felt right. There was no pretense, no obligation, only two people standing side by side, committed to truth, integrity, and love. In the weeks that followed, my world stabilized. The studio flourished, my projects thrived, and the shadow of betrayal became nothing more than a lesson etched into memory. Sam and I grew closer, our intimacy deepening naturally, filled with laughter, shared ambition, and quiet, unwavering support. Each day was a reminder that life, when built on clarity and honesty, could be rich, vibrant, and deeply fulfilling. Looking back, the surge that had once shocked me, the one that forced me to see the reality I had been ignoring, felt almost like a gift. It had shattered illusions, cleared the fog, and opened the way to a life that was authentically mine. With Sam by my side, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving, loved, and fiercely alive. For the first time, I could say with complete certainty, I was free. I was whole. And I had finally found my true home. Not in a person who had deceived me, but in someone who matched my honesty, respected my strength, and shared my vision of a life worth living.